Welcome to the Pulsating Biology, and this video is in continuation of the previous video where we were discussing about the cell structure and the function. Like always, we'll be going through the syllabus first. I've always recommended students to have the syllabus whether in the hard copy or the soft copy. We have discussed the 1.1 and it has 6 pointers where we have been asked in the third pointer to go through some of the organelles that includes ribosomes, mitochondria, nucleus, cytoplasm and the cell membrane. We discussed most of them in the last video. If you haven't watched that video, I'd request you to first watch that video and then this video. In this video, we'll begin with basically first looking at the organelle that is mitochondria. So our topic for the first organelle is basically mitochondria. We all are very much aware of mitochondria on how it is majorly popular for being the powerhouse of the cell. Most of the students knows that it is known as the powerhouse of the cell, but why is it so? It is so because it provides ATP. We will be discussing about ATP in detail. Before that, we will be discussing about mitochondria first. So mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. It releases energy. It is a pack of energy packets that keeps on releasing the energy. It produces ATP, and ATP is basically, because of the presence of ATP or the realization of the ATP, it is known as the energy currency. Now, what is meant by energy currency? For suppose if you travel to UK, you'll be traveling with some pounds. If you travel to Dubai, you will be traveling with some dirhams. Similarly, if you want to go through some of the cell for its efficient working, you need ATP. So ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate, which basically indicates that it has 3 phosphate groups in itself. So mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell since it provides ATP. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate, which have 3 phosphate groups in it, and it is the energy currency. If you see the structure of mitochondria, it is basically double layered structure. It is a 2-layered organelle, and it consists of its own DNA and ribosome. Whenever an organelle consider DNA and ribosome in its structure, it means that it is capable of making its own protein. And mitochondria is majorly famous for its production of its own protein since it has DNA and ribosome in its structure itself. Whenever a DNA and ribosome are present in a singular cell, they work hand in hand to produce protein. So one of the very important functions that students usually don't remember is that the mitochondria is responsible for aerobic respiration. It is a site for aerobic respiration of many organisms in the biosphere. So these are some of the functions of mitochondria and how it can produce its own protein by the help of DNA and the ribosome, and it's majorly famous as powerhouse of the cell because of the ATP that stands for adenosine triphosphate. Let's move on to another organelle. Well, the other organelle that we will be discussing is the nucleus. Now, we all know that nucleus is very important part of the cell, and it is also one of the most prominent part of the cell because it handles all of the main activities of the cell. We will be discussing about the structure, function, and also the cell type. So basically, the structure of the nucleus is a double membrane organelle. It is not a single membrane, it is a double membrane organelle that consists of pores. It is perforated. That means that these pores are known as the nucleopores, through which the substance can enter and leave out of the nuclear membrane. Well, it is a prominent part of the cell, and its function is that it is a control center and deals with all of the major and the important functions of its cell, and also it makes RNA and the protein for the cellular activities. Well, along with the nucleus, a very famous organelle that itself is a present is the nucleolus. We have often heard about it, but however, we are not well aware of its function. Nucleolus is basically responsible for the production of ribosome. It helps in producing the ribosome that is just around the nucleus. Another structure in the nucleus is the nuclear membrane. Nuclear membrane is just around the nucleus and is a double membrane organelle under which the nucleopores are present. So this is majorly what a nucleus looks like and how the nucleopore functions and how the nucleus functions in its structure. There are two kinds of these cell type. If we discuss the cell types that are present, they are basically eukaryotic and the animal and the plant cell that are also known as the prokaryotic and the animal cell. One thing that we do need to remember is that bacteria does not have a nucleus, whereas all the eukaryotic organelles, plants, animals, that means all the prokaryotic organisms, each of them have the nucleus, but bacteria does not have the nucleus. This is some major things that we need to remember in nucleus according to your syllabus. So much detail is not present, so we won't be discussing that. We will be discussing another organelle, but that's it for the nucleus. The next organelle, which does not require so much of introduction and the detail in your syllabus, is the chloroplast. Well, now what is meant by a chloroplast? Chloroplast consists of certain organs that chloroplast consists of certain organelles in itself and some substances that are very important in a plant cell. For example, chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is very important for plants in order to produce their food, as it consumes the light energy and convert it into the chemical energy which is in the form of food. So chloroplast plays a very important role in it. Chloroplast itself has its own DNA and the protein and also the ribosome. Thus, they make their own protein. We have discussed it very earlier in the previous organelle that how the presence of DNA and the ribosome combines together hand in hand for the production of protein. So along with the mitochondria, chloroplast is a very common organelle that has these capability of making its own protein. One of the most important function of chloroplast is the photosynthesis, which involves the production of food with the help of a sunlight and the water, and it produces the glucose, which need a lot of enzymes and also a lot of energy. So this is a very short review on chloroplast. Since the chloroplast is very important and has a very important function in the plant. The next, we don't have an organelle, but we have a very short topic on protein, on how the protein is synthesized in the cell. In your syllabus, the detail is not being asked, but the names are, however, being asked at how the processes of protein works. So there are two processes in the synthesis of protein. One is the transcription, while the other is translation. In O levels, you just need to remember the names of the protein synthesis rather than getting into the detail on how the protein is being synthesized in the process of transcription or translation. So that's it for this video. We have discussed some organelles and also these two protein synthesis, the processes of these protein. The further organelles and the further pointers of 1.1 shall be discussed in the next video.